Hello, I'm Leonardo Puglisi. It's Sunday, the 10th of July. You're watching 6 News. Our top story tonight: assassination fallout continues after former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was shot dead during a campaign rally. Tributes continue to flow in as many ask around the world, how could this happen in a country where shootings are so rare? Plus, only a matter of time. Former Home Affairs Minister Karen Andrews warns of possible future assassination attempts in Australia following the killing of Japan's ex-PM. We look into the history of such attempts in Australia, and later.
It is clearly now the will of the Parliamentary Conservative Party that there should be a new leader of that party and therefore a new Prime Minister.
The campaign to replace Boris Johnson ramps up, but it could take weeks, possibly months, to find a new Conservative Party leader that will take over from the now caretaker British PM, as calls for an early election in the UK continue. Good evening. We begin this hour on 6 News with the latest on the situation in Japan. Fallout from the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe tonight continuing as world leaders pay tribute. Tonight we're learning more about how it unfolded, from the minutes leading up to the two shots being fired to the immediate reaction amid claims that security was too slow to act. And in a country with so little gun violence, many are asking the simple question: just how could this happen? Political reporter Roman McKinnon begins our coverage.
Tributes are continuing to follow after former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was assassinated at a campaign event in Nara, east of Osaka. He was shot from behind while speaking ahead of today's upper house election in Japan. What we know about the gunman is that he is 41, unemployed, and apparently held a grudge against a group that the gunman thought Mr. Abe was a part of. 2 shots were fired from a homemade sawed-off shotgun that appeared to be wrapped in black duct tape to disguise the weapon. Shinzo Abe was the longest-serving Japanese Prime Minister, holding the balance of power for 9 years before stepping down in 2020 amid health concerns. This has no doubt sent shockwaves across the globe, with Australian political leaders sending their condolences, including Anthony Albanese, Peter Dutton, Maurice Payne and Scott Morrison. Gun laws in Japan are sealed tight, with no Japanese Prime Minister, former or current, to be shot in more than 90 years. Some could speculate that gun laws will need to be tightened, but they are among the most strict in the world. The security around these events is definitely something that will be investigated and no doubt be ramped up. Footage shows Mr. Abe being shot, with security personnel scrambling and pinning the attacker to the ground. As for sentencing, Japan is one of the only 2 countries still with the life sentence, as the gunman's charges will likely be updated from attempted murder to murder after a series of events starting at midday local time, with Japanese media reporting that Shinzo Abe collapsed and was bleeding. Fast forward to 6 p.m. local time, when Abe had been reported dead. The full timeline of events is on our Twitter account, and any new developments and breaking news on our social media at SIXNewsAU. Shinzo Abe died at the age of 67 in Kansai, which was the Prime Minister's special ward.
Former Home Affairs Minister Karen Andrews has also reacted to the news. Speaking to Channel 9's Today Show, she said it was only a matter of time before an assassination attempt in Australia.
Quite frankly, and I hate to say this, it is but a matter of time until we experience such an assassination attempt in Australia.
Now, assassinations are rare in Australian politics. New South Wales Labor MP John Newman was shot and killed in 1994 in what was described by some as Australia's first political assassination. Fong No, who ran against Newman as an independent in 1991, was convicted of the murder a decade later. There was one before that, though. Hyman Goldstein, a New South Wales nationalist MP, was found dead after a fall in 1928. However, homicide is suspected, with political rival Thomas Lee later convicted for murder in England. The prime suspect, Percy Brookfield, who was at different points a member of Labor, Industrial Socialist Labor And Socialist Labour was killed when trying to disarm someone at a train station, although there is no evidence of a political motive in his death. Labour's Albert Whitford was shot dead in Brisbane in 1924, though he was no longer in office after losing his seat at Burrum in 1920. And there's also Ivans Buffett, Lands Minister and Deputy Chief Minister of Norfolk Island, which is of course an Australian external territory, shot dead in his office in 2004. Some people have also pointed to the UK with the murder of Labor MP Joe Cox in 2016 and more recently Conservative Sir David Armis last year. Well, Stuart Jeffrey is a Six News political contributor, also a digital editor. He's got a number of pieces on our website right now, SIXNewsAU.com. Stuart, you just heard from Karen Andrews there, the former Home Affairs Minister, speaking about that it's only a matter of time before an assassination attempt happens in Australia, and obviously that been so rare, as we've just discussed. Only a couple. The last one that happened to a minister or an MP rather, I think, was New South Wales, in 1994. So they're really rare. What did you make of those comments?
Look, I think that it happening in Australia is very, very, very unlikely. Then again, it was sort of something about Japan, because, just how strict the gun control laws are there, and yet it still had Shinzo Abe die. So it is extremely unlikely to happen in Australia, but it's always possible.
Now, the other thing I want to mention, and that we discussed earlier, gun violence is so rare in Japan, and we were discussing it when we were actually live on air with you about how strict their gun control rules is. But for this to happen, can you imagine that there'll be some pretty strong reviews, not just into the laws, but also the security around the former Prime Minister, because you see the video of when it happened, and everyone just completely freezes after that first shot before the second fatal one happens.
Well, Japan's gun control laws date back to the 1600s, and they've always had strict control around who can own a firearm, who can own even swords. In 1958, they banned possession of both swords and firearms by ordinary citizens. To own a shotgun, which is the weapon that we've seen used here, to 95% accuracy on a firing range, written test, background check, mental health test, everything like that. So it's very, very complex. For someone to be able to make their own firearm basically at home, black powder firearm at home, and then get close enough to Shinzo Abe to kill him, it does really raise the questions around security and how he got into that position. Because I believe you said yesterday that they only recently announced a change in location the day before, so it does raise serious questions around how did he get the information. I believe he was ex-military.
Yeah, ex self-defense force there. Yeah.
Yes.
Look, the other thing I guess that we'll touch on finally, this has been a huge story around the world, and especially here in Australia. And I've seen some comments saying, Japan is one of, a few countries outside of the West where a former leader being assassinated would make this much news, this much attention. How important is Japan, not just to the world, but specifically to Australia?
Well, Japan under Shinzo Abe really became a lot more involved in peacekeeping operations. As you said, the self-defense force that they had there, it wasn't really allowed to be used for any offensive purposes or any peacekeeping purposes until Shinzo Abe. 2014, 2015, his government basically reinstated through the Constitution, Article 9, to allow for their self-defense force to be deployed overseas. So that's really a massive, massive change in their posture. You think from the end of World War II, they did not allow any use of their armed forces. And for that change we've brought in is a major change in the position that they've had. And in 2014, you had the Japan-Australia trade deal between Abe and then, at the time, it was Tony Abbott, who was Prime Minister. So a major cultural and economic ally to Australia, and a major player in global affairs now, especially with the changes to their self-defense forces.
Absolutely, and you have to just remember how many Aussie Prime Ministers went with Abe. Don't forget his first term, 2006 to 2007. I saw footage of him with John Howard. Of course, when he came back in 2012, Julia Gillard, Kevin Rudd, Tony Abbott, Malcolm Turnbull, and then finally Scott Morrison. And of course, Anthony Albanese, never met him, but we know he was also in Japan. Oh, sorry, wasn't he? But he was the Quad meeting involving Japan. So obviously a huge story and something that's going to continue to have ramifications. Stuart Jeffrey, 6 News contributor, thanks very much for joining us and for your insight.
Thank you.
Well, changing pace now, in the campaign to replace Boris Johnson is tonight ramping up, but it could take weeks, possibly months, to find a new leader of the Conservative Party that will take over from the now caretaker British Prime Minister. There's also been calls, including from Labour leader Keir Starmer, for an early election in the UK, with the next one not expected until 2024. Reporter Austin Pollock has more.
Scandal after scandal, party after party, resignation after resignation. Then finally, Boris goes.
It is clearly now the will of the Parliamentary Conservative Party that there should be a new leader of that party and therefore a new Prime Minister.
After 50 Tory MPs resigned from their roles in recent days. Messages coming in from around the world, including Anthony Albanese, saying he wishes him well. Politics is a tough business, and what a reminder the events of last evening are, Anthony Albanese said on the Today Show. And also Ukrainian leader Vladimir Zelensky. Mr. Johnson's resignation was met with sadness in Kiev. Johnson will, however, stay on as the Prime Minister for now, as a caretaker, until the party chooses a new leader, which may not be until much later this year when the party meets. Even though pressures from within his own party...
This week again, we have reason to question the truth and integrity of what we've all been told. And at some point, we have to conclude that enough is enough.
The people of England and the opposition want him to go imminently, although unlikely. But it may still be possible, with the opposition threatening a vote of no confidence.
They've declared him unfit to be Prime Minister. They can't inflict him on the country for the next few months. If they don't get rid of him, we will bring that vote of no confidence in the national interest.
But when he does go, there are multiple Tories who are beginning to put up their hands for the top job. Some potential frontrunners are Liz Truss, Rishi Sunak, who only just days after Boris made the announcement has already started his campaign.
I got into politics because I want everyone in this country to have those same opportunities. But I'm running to be our next Prime Minister because it's your stories that matter most.
And also Ben Wallace, who was the most popular among Tory MPs according to a YouGov poll. The chances of an early election are also very slim, unless the new Prime Minister, when they are elected, wants to call one prior to 2025. Boris Johnson became PM in 2019 following Theresa May's resignation, meaning he is one of the shortest serving leaders in United Kingdom's history. But over his time, he is most famous for delivering on the Brexit deal. In the House of Commons, the Conservative Party does have a majority of 358 seats versus the opposition party, Labour, with 200 seats, followed by other parties such as the Scottish National Party, and also many more with a combined total of 92 seats in the House. But if there was an election now, many predict the Tories wouldn't even stay. But now we will just have to wait and see how much longer the party will roll on for Boris Johnson. Austin Pollock, 6 News London.
And for more on how this entire replacement process is undertaken, you can check out a new explainer piece on our website right now, SIXNewsAU.com. Well, meanwhile, Foreign Minister Penny Wong says Australia and China have taken the, quote, first step towards stabilising the relationship between the two nations following her meeting with Chinese counterpart Wang Yi. Wong has confirmed that the federal government will continue to push for, quote, China's, quote, coercive trade sanctions, against a range of exports to end. It also comes after that diplomatic freeze between China and Beijing ended after Anthony Albanese was elected as Prime Minister and an Albanese government was sworn in. Overseas now, the Po River, one of Italy's longest, is continuing to face an unprecedented drought. According to Euro News, Marco Gardella, environmental engineer for the Po River Basin Authority, said that since last November, the amount of precipitation has decreased by half and the amount of snow has decreased by 70%. Gardella goes on to say that this has, quote, prevented lakes from being filled, something that is crucial to sustaining the river flow. Water restrictions have now tonight been, as a result, imposed in over 100 municipalities in the nearby region. Russia is reportedly tonight ramping up its offensive against Ukraine. President Vladimir Putin has now said that Moscow has barely even started in the country and has even dared the West to try and defeat it. The country has now taken control of much of eastern and southern Ukraine as that conflict continues. We're taking a look at what's making news on SIXNewsAU.com right now, and as we mentioned a bit earlier, reaction to the assassination of Shinzo Abe still coming in from world leaders and social media users tonight. On TikTok, videos known as Little Dark Age edits using that MGMT song have also been made about the shooting. You can actually see that on our website right now. Also, federalism and COVID-19 restrictions. Who has the final say? Contributor Stuart Jeffrey, who you saw a bit earlier, takes an in-depth look at recent changes made by the federal government. Plus, who are voices for the Senate? The political party has now just been registered by the AEC weeks after the election it was meant to run in, meaning it's almost certainly going to be a 3-year wait for them before they can run anywhere. And the Australian Values Party has confirmed plans to run in the Vic election. The party had 0.31% of the total Senate vote in Victoria at the federal election. Legalised cannabis, family first, the UAP and the New Freedom Party are also all attempting to run in that November election. And I was Arvin and Melly with a look what's coming up later tonight on WAMN News.
Thank you, Leo. Tonight on WAMN News, a protest looms over the decision to move juvenile detainees to a maximum security prison. An exclusive interview coming up.
Also tonight, tributes to Trisha as Perth locals joined the memorial walk remembering WA's favourite elephant.
Health workers threaten to walk off the job as demands grow for rise in pay. And later, Dr. Andrew Miller's comment.
Join us tonight on the WAMN News Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Thanks both Arvin and Melly. Then to tomorrow's weather forecast right across the country. Brisbane partly cloudy, 19 degrees. That rain not going away in Sydney, 14 there. Canberra getting to a top of 14 as well. Also 14 in Melbourne, partly cloudy. Hobart, you guessed it, 14. 13 in Adelaide, a chance of showers. 19 in Alice Springs, sunny. Also sunny in Perth, 17 degrees. And in Darwin, a warm top, the usual there, of 28. Before we go tonight, recapping our top stories in fallout continues tonight after former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was assassinated during a campaign rally. Ex-Home Affairs Minister Karen Andrews warning it's a matter of time before an attempt happens here as tributes continue to flow in from around the world as many ask, how could this happen in a country where shootings are so rare? And finally tonight, if you'd like to see more from our website, SIXNewsAU.com, like the pieces we mentioned a little earlier, you can now sign up to our little newsletter we've got. You can find the link to that on SIXNewsAU.com. I'll bring you the latest insights from the editor, that's myself. Also some pieces you may have missed and some upcoming stories. So you can sign up for that right now. SIXNewsAU.com, the link is there. It should be the most recent story. Some breaking news has happened while we're on air. But for now, that is 6 News for this Sunday evening. You can stay up to date with all the latest headlines by heading to that website, SIXNewsAU.com, and by following us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Leeds. You search 6NewsAU to find us. Help keep us independent as well by donating just $4 a month, and you'll receive exclusive benefits at patreon.com/6NewsAU. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Thanks for your company. Good night.